Below the Black, written by Stories After Dark. Chapter 1. The Pulse Beneath. They were already too deep when it started. Past the light, past the drift of plankton that shimmered like ash, past the trenches with names. There was only black here, and pressure. The DSS Cassilia groaned as it descended, her titanium shell whispering under the weight of 6 miles of ocean. The walls didn't creak. They sang, low and strained, like something exhaling a secret. Lena Mirek stared through the forward viewport, though there was nothing to see. Just black. A black so complete, it felt like being watched from inside a sealed eyelid. She didn't flinch when the lights flickered. She'd done this before. But this trench, this one was new. No charts, no names. Did anyone else hear that? Kamara's voice came through the comm, soft, brittle, like she didn't want to ask. There was a long silence. Then Anders Holt spoke from the helm, chewing his ever-present gum. What? The groaning? Or the ghostly whisper begging for salvation? Kamara didn't laugh. Rel muttered from the engine deck, "Not funny, man." Lena's eyes stayed fixed on the void. It hadn't been groaning, not the ship at least. This had been rhythmic, deep, a kind of underwater drumbeat. Faint, but there. Tessa confirmed it, picking up something, ultra-low frequency, infra-acoustic, like, I don't know, a whale, but regular. Regular? Lena asked without turning. Every 243 seconds. Repeating, not mechanical, not geological. Rajesh Sen leaned forward in his seat, adjusting his glasses. Every 243? That's not natural repetition. That's a signal. Lena closed her eyes. Of course it was. The Cassilia continued her descent, inertial dampeners whispering under the pressure. Instruments showed they were nearing the bottom of the Thorn Trench, a recently discovered rift that hadn't appeared in satellite scans just 3 years prior. It had no tectonic reason to exist. No one wanted to talk about that part. Kamara's voice came again, quieter this time. I don't think it's saying anything. No, Sen murmured. Not to us. The next 30 minutes passed in silence. It wasn't peace. It was reverence. Then they saw it. Rising from the trench floor, barely illuminated by the Cassilia's external lights, was a vertical face. It looked like a cliff at first, but it wasn't rock. It was smoother, darker, cut, carved. Bringing us around, Holt said, voice suddenly professional, clipped. There's something on the wall. The light swept across it like a spotlight on a stage, revealing swirling patterns etched into its surface, circular, spiraling, intersecting like tidal currents turned to stone. It reached so far upward, the top was lost in black. Tessa was already snapping photos with a kind of academic hunger. It's a structure, she breathed. This is not natural. No one disagreed. The lines weren't erosion. They had symmetry, intent. Lena leaned forward, staring. Her breath slowed. It wasn't awe. It was something else, like remembering something she'd never learned. I've seen this before, Rel said from behind. No one responded, because they had all thought the same thing. A sudden crackle in the comms made Kamara flinch. Then came the sound again, not from the outside, from within the ship's system. Thum, thum. 2 pulses. 43 seconds apart. This is coming through the internal receiver, Kamara whispered, turning dials. We're not receiving this from the outside anymore. That's not possible, Lena said, but she didn't sound convinced. The Caecilia wasn't built to broadcast, and yet the signal was now internal. No transmission, just presence. Holt pointed to the viewport. There's something at the base of it. Left corner. Is that a... Lena squinted. Her heart didn't race, but something behind her eyes tightened. Nestled where the wall met the sea floor was a curve, like a door half buried in sediment. But it wasn't the shape that unsettled her. It was the light. A pale glow pulsed just beneath it, once every 43 seconds, matching the signal. Tessa exhaled. It's breathing. No, Sen murmured. It's remembering. Lena stood, steadying herself against the incline of the floor as the ship shifted. She stared at the glow and said nothing. The hair on her arms didn't rise. The fear didn't come like thunder. It came like pressure, gradual, crushing, a warning the body was too small to understand. Kamara's voice crackled again, but this time it wasn't hers. It was her voice, but not her speaking. Come below. The air inside the Caecilia turned still. The instruments continued their quiet blinking. The walls of the trench face waited, unmoving, ancient, alive. No one said anything. Then the lights flickered again. But this time, they didn't come back on. Chapter 2. The Monument Wall. The lights didn't come back on for 12 full seconds. In the dark, no one breathed. When they did return, it wasn't gradual. No hum of systems warming, no flicker. Just light. Cold, too white, glaring through the narrow interior of the Caecilia, like a searchlight inside a coffin. Lena blinked. The faces around her looked subtly changed. Not terrified. Not yet. Just more hollow. Like the darkness had taken something when it passed. Diagnostics running, Rel said. His voice didn't sound like a man doing diagnostics. It sounded like a man trying to stay awake during a dream. Power systems stable, Holt added. But he didn't stop chewing his gum. He'd doubled his pace, the sharp scent of ginger filling the cabin. No surge, no anomaly, no reason for the blackout. But there had been a reason. The trench had simply decided to blink. Outside the viewport, the monument loomed closer now. Holt had gently edged the sub forward during the power loss, his hands on the controls, even as the lights died. That didn't comfort Lena. The wall stretched beyond the cone of light. Black stone, darker than the ocean itself, etched with patterns that seemed to rearrange themselves depending on the angle. Circles folded into one another, fractals that bent the eye. There was no coral, no life, no dust. Nothing grew here. Nothing dared. Tessa stood beside Lena now, mouth slightly open, eyes flicking rapidly across the surface like she was reading something faster than language allowed. It's not just a structure, she whispered. It's intentional architecture, purposeful, ritualistic, but on a scale I can't map. Rel scoffed behind her, but it lacked conviction. You're calling it a cathedral? No. Tessa touched the viewport with her gloved hand, tracing a symbol near the base. I'm calling it a tomb. The submarine's lights reached farther this time, and for the first time, they could see the full outline of the curved form embedded in the base of the wall. A massive ring, at least 12 feet tall, half buried under eons of black silt. Around the rim, more etchings, concentric rings of glyphs that glinted ever so faintly, like metal under skin. Then something shifted. Only a shadow at first. Something across the glyphs, just beneath them. A shimmer, no, a reflection. There shouldn't have been anything to reflect. And yet, for a single breath, Lena thought she saw the Caecilia mirrored in the curve. a perfect reflection, until she realized there were 7 figures inside it. She counted again. 1 more than there should have been. Kamara gasped from her station. "It's back. The signal." The pulse returned, not through the ocean, but through the ship itself, a subtle vibration humming through the walls, like the submarine was being used as an instrument. A hollow bone. Thump, thump. Sen leaned forward again, his voice the kind of calm that only existed when fear was fully processed and filed away. "This isn't communication. It's an invitation." Lena didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the ring. The door, if that's what it was, had changed. A narrow seam had appeared at the top of the curve. Nothing dramatic, no screeching open, just a line, like lips parting for breath. "Dr. Mirek," Holt said. He never called her that. "We need to back off. This place is starting to feel real wrong." "It was always wrong," she said. The lights outside flickered again, just the exterior this time, strobing once like a dying pulse. In that flash, something moved across the face of the monument. A line, not a creature, not a form, just a shape, long and slow, trailing like ink, bleeding in water. They were too deep for marine life, too deep for movement. Tessa leaned in so close to the glass, her breath fogged it. "The carvings changed," she said. "The symbol, this one right here. It wasn't there before. I would have seen it." No one spoke. Inside the silence, the signal stopped. Mid-cycle. Just cut off. Kamara turned her head slightly, not looking at anything. And then, softly, she whispered, "We were the ones who forgot." Lena turned sharply. "Kamara?" But the younger woman blinked, confused, and shook her head. "What?" "You just said something." "I didn't." Rel muttered something under his breath and returned to his system readouts, hands twitchy. Sen was still watching the carvings. He tilted his head slightly and scribbled in his notebook with a pencil that had been sharpened down to a stub. "Memory as transmission medium," he said to no one in particular. "It's not talking to us through language. It's using recognition. Echoes of things we already know." "Like dreams," Lena said. She didn't mean to. "Like guilt," Sen corrected. Holt had started turning the sub gently, pulling them back. "That's enough sightseeing for one day. If this thing wants to be admired, it can get in line." The Cassilia began its slow drift upward, back toward the mapped section of the trench wall. But Lena couldn't take her eyes off the glyphs, the way they pulsed faintly now, as though lit from behind by something far deeper still. One symbol in particular. It looked familiar, like something she'd seen in her fiancé's notebook. Before the implosion. She didn't ask how she remembered that now, or why it hadn't occurred to her until this moment. The trench had given it back to her, like a favor. As they drifted back into open trench, the wall receded into blackness once again. But the signal didn't return, and the lights didn't flicker. And the next time Lena looked at the logs from the external cameras, she found a 30-second clip at the end of the recording. In it, the Cassilia hovered motionless beside the monument wall. And behind it, out of the dark, something opened its eyes. Chapter 3. Eyes of the Stone. The next morning never came. There was no morning here, only light that strained against the dark, and systems that insisted on marking the hours because the human mind couldn't bear to exist without them. By the time the Cassilia's chronometer said 0900, the crew had already stopped pretending it mattered. Lena hadn't slept. She'd sat in the forward cabin long after the others had drifted off to uneasy dreams, watching the recording again and again. The one Kamara found. 30 seconds of nothing. Then that slow, undeniable flicker. 2 faint glimmers deep in the trench, like reflections caught in the light beam. But there was nothing for the light to reflect from. Nothing at all. When she played it a final time, she muted the sound. She didn't want to hear it again. That faint vibration beneath the hum of the engines, that heartbeat too slow to be mechanical. At 0943, the pulse returned. Kamara's voice broke through the comms. Signals active again. Same pattern. But it's closer. How close? Lena asked. Kamara hesitated. Inside our range, like it's here. Rel cursed under his breath, a quiet, frustrated sound that barely reached her. Holt's hands tightened on the controls. Tessa appeared in the doorway to the flight deck, eyes wide and sharp, her shaved head gleaming under the instrument lights. I ran the sonar sweep, she said. The monument wall. It's not static. The lower thirds moved about 12 meters toward the sub. Lena turned slowly to her. Moved? I double-checked. The structure shifted. Rock doesn't move, Dr. Huang. That's why I said structure. The air in the Cecilia felt denser now, as if the water itself was pressing through the hull, saturating the metal. Even Holt's usual sarcasm had dried up. The ginger scent was gone too. He'd stopped chewing hours ago. Rel's voice came from behind them, flat, uncertain. I'm getting echo readings in the aft corridor, like secondary resonance. But it's not mechanical. It's rhythmic. Show me. He hesitated. It's easier if you feel it. They followed him down the narrow passage that led to engineering. The hum was faint at first, a low vibration that came up through the floor plating. Then Lena felt it. Thump. Thump. Subtle, measured, the same as before, but closer now. Internal, like the ship had developed a second pulse. Could be harmonic feedback, Holt said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. It's not feedback, Rel murmured. It's synchronization. He reached out and laid a hand against the wall. She's picking up the signal, or it's picking her up. The others watched him. The phrasing didn't even register as strange until a few seconds later. Lena stepped closer to the bulkhead. The metal was cool, but beneath the chill there was a vibration, not uniform, not like machinery. It varied, subtly, a rhythm of something alive, trying to mimic human cadence. Breathing. Tessa took out her scanner. The readouts were erratic, flickering between biological and mineral responses. It's impossible. It's reading as carbon-based for a moment, then flipping back to alloy. Maybe the sensors are malfunctioning, Holt said. Maybe your nerves are, Tessa replied, not unkindly. The Cecilia shuddered then, a long, slow shift, not from collision but from something vast, displacing water around them. The lights dimmed, then flared. Kamara's voice crackled over the intercom. Lena, you need to see this. They hurried back to the main cabin. The external feed was active, the trench wall now a featureless black sheet ahead of them. Kamara adjusted the light angle, narrowing the beam. That's when they saw it. The carvings were gone. Every swirl, every symbol etched into the stone face. Erased. The surface looked smooth, freshly carved by some unseen hand. Where did they go? Holt whispered. They didn't go anywhere, Tessa said. They've turned. What do you mean, turned? Look closer. The camera zoomed in. At first it was impossible to see, but slowly the truth revealed itself. The carvings hadn't vanished. They'd rotated inward, the outer wall shifting on itself like interlocking plates. The stone was rearranging. The patterns now formed a single central shape, an oval, hollowed in the middle, with two small round depressions near the top. Eyes, Sen murmured. Lena felt something cold move in her chest. It's looking at us. The pulse hit again, stronger this time. It rattled through the hull, the air, their bones. The monitors flickered once. Then Kamara screamed. The audio feed from the exterior sensors had begun to play by itself, looping fragments of sound that weren't theirs. Distorted echoes of human voices. Some words half-formed, others impossibly clear. They were speaking their names, not just one or two, all six. Lena leaned closer, eyes wide, breath shallow. The voices weren't mimicking. They were remembering. The pulse grew louder, faster, almost frantic. The trench itself seemed to shudder in time, as if something enormous below was struggling to wake. Rel stumbled backward, pressing his hands to his ears. "Turn it off!" he shouted. "Shut it off!" Kamara tried. The controls didn't respond. The console flickered violently, screens flashing images that made no sense. Clouds, a city skyline, the pale curve of a human face underwater. Then, the feed died. Silence again. Crushing. Unbearable. The Cassilia hung motionless in the black. Lena turned back toward the viewport and froze. Where the monument wall had been, there was now a faint ripple of light, moving like a current. It shifted and condensed, then broke apart again, scattering into hundreds of tiny luminescent shapes. They weren't fish. They weren't light distortions. They were eyes. Hundreds of them, each one staring directly at the sub. Sen spoke softly, voice shaking but steady. "It's not a monument." Tessa swallowed. "Then what is it?" He didn't look away from the window. "It's a face." The Cassilia's lights flickered again, and in the brief darkness between them, something answered from the deep. It didn't roar. It didn't move. It breathed. Chapter 4. The Language of Descent. The sound lingered long after it ended. It was not a roar, not vibration or sonar. It was the ocean inhaling, slow, deliberate, aware. The Cassilia hung inside that breath like a moat inside a lung. Every panel, every screw, seemed to pulse once, then rest. No one spoke for a long time. They watched the eyes fade into black, until only their own reflections stared back at them from the glass. Holt's jaw worked as he found another piece of gum, unwrapped it with fingers that trembled only slightly. Tessa was still at the viewport, whispering to herself, cataloging impossible geometry under her breath. Lena wanted to tell them to stop, to move, to surface, to do anything. But something in her resisted. A quiet pull, steady and low, like gravity, but older. The pulse had changed again, faster now, almost eager, and she felt it behind her ribs, matching her heartbeat until she could no longer tell which belonged to whom. "Record everything," she said. Her own voice startled her. It sounded smaller, as if it had traveled a long distance to reach the air. Kamara nodded, pale and drawn. Her fingers trembled on the console. The ship's interior cameras blinked awake, each light a tiny red eye. For a moment, Lena thought she saw one blink out of sequence, as if something else were recording them back. Sen moved between the stations, scribbling symbols from the last transmission. The page was filled with looping arcs and interlocking circles that never quite met. "It's not random," he murmured. "It's structure, syntax, not language in the human sense, but communication, built from intention. It learns through imitation." "It's copying us?" Holt asked. Sen looked up. No, it's becoming us. The hum rose again, filling the narrow space with a pressure that pressed at their teeth and skulls. Kamara winced, clamping the headphones tighter around her ears. It's speaking, she whispered, but not in words. I can almost... She stopped, eyes unfocused. Cam? She blinked once, then smiled faintly, a child caught mid-dream. It says it remembers us. Lena moved toward her, careful, as though approaching a sleepwalker. What remembers us? The deep. Kamara's smile widened, not entirely her own. It waited for us to come back. The lights dimmed to a bruised red. Somewhere aft, Rel cursed softly. A tool clattered against metal. Electrical surge again, systems spiking like crazy. He didn't look up when he added, feels like the whole hull's breathing. Tessa laughed once, the sound brittle. Maybe it is. She ran a hand across her scalp and stared at the data scrolling across her monitor. The walls moving again, not closer this time, receding, making space. For what? Holt asked. No one answered. Lena crossed to the viewport. Outside, the trench floor had begun to clear, silt drifting upward in thick veils. Beneath it, shapes were emerging, pillars, arches, corridors, twisting away into the dark. It looked like the ruins of a city, but built downward, every surface folding into another, like the inside of an impossible shell. A faint glow threaded through the formations, pulsing in time with the signal. She watched the rhythm for a long moment, before realizing she was breathing with it. She stopped, forced a shallow breath that didn't fit the pattern, and the glass fogged instantly, as though the structure outside had exhaled in irritation. Sen stood beside her now, notebook hanging at his side. His pupils were wide, nearly black. You feel it too, he said softly. The alignment. She turned away. We're leaving. Now. Holt hesitated at the controls. Engines respond. I'll take her up. He threw a switch. The engines roared once, then fell silent. Warning lights blinked on. Oxygen scrubbers, power relays, thrusters, one after another, until the console looked like a row of dying embers. Rel's voice came through the intercom, strained. Systems aren't responding. It's like something's holding us. Tessa leaned close to her monitor, whispering numbers that had no meaning. Not holding, she said. Synchronizing. It wants us still. A whisper threaded through the comms. Not static, not mechanical. A breath that shaped itself into sound, just long enough to be understood. Stay. The word slid through the air like oil. Kamara pressed a hand to her chest, tears spilling without sound. Holt's gum dropped from his mouth. Rel swore again, softer this time. Lena's fingers tightened around the armrest until the plastic creaked. Turn off the receivers. Kamara shook her head. I can't. They're not on. The whisper came again, closer now, not through speakers but through the metal itself. The hull vibrated with the syllables, resonating in their bones. One must listen. One must stay. Sen lifted his head, expression serene. It needs a voice. He took a step toward the viewport. Lena caught his sleeve. Rajesh, don't. He smiled faintly, as if the words came from far away. If I can translate it, maybe it'll let us go. The hum deepened. The glass shimmered with faint light, shapes moving just beyond visibility. For a heartbeat, Lena saw them. Figures drifting in the water, human in outline, faceless, waiting. Sen touched the glass, and the vibration stilled. His breath fogged once, then vanished. The pulse quieted to a single steady rhythm. Kamara whispered, "It's listening now." No one moved. The light steadied, soft and dim, painting every surface in the color of old blood. Outside, the trench wall opened, slow, silent, vast. Lena stared into the widening dark and understood, finally, that it had never been a monument or a face. It was a mouth, and they were already inside it. Chapter 5. The Pressure of Thought. The mouth did not open quickly. It widened the way glaciers calve or bones fracture under pressure, imperceptible at first, but undeniable in its consequences. The trench wall unfolded like a slow wound, stone peeling from stone, until the opening gaped wider than the caecilia itself. There was no movement of water, no surge or pull. The sea stayed perfectly still, as though waiting for permission to breathe. Lena stared through the viewport and did not blink. Neither did the others. Behind her, the quiet sounds of the ship had changed. No more hum of filtration, no fans, no clicks of idle systems. Just silence. The kind that swelled in your ears until you heard your own heartbeat, loud and alone. Sen had not moved since touching the glass. He stood with one palm pressed against it, the reflection of his fingers overlaid perfectly with the faint glow beyond. His lips moved now, slowly, silently, like prayer or surrender. Tessa's voice came, low and sharp, the air pressures dropping. Holt checked his console. O2 scrubbers are shutting down. Kamara's hands hovered above her panel, not touching. I didn't command anything. It's doing it on its own. Rel's voice crackled over the comms, his breathing fast. Engineering bays icing over. I can see my breath. Lena turned. Manual overrides. Dead. The walls ticked softly, not with stress but with rhythm. The same old pulse, steady now, like a metronome keeping time. Thumb, thumb. Each vibration traced through the floor into their shoes, their legs, their bones. Not painful, not even unpleasant, but insistent. The silence was a presence now. It felt filled, with breath, with weight, with something listening. Sen spoke first. His voice was calm, but not his own. It doesn't want to harm us. Lena stepped toward him. Rajesh. He didn't look at her. It wants to merge. Tessa barked a laugh. Merge with what? With us. There was no reaction at first. Just the soft hiss of stale air and the gentle pings of descending temperature. Then Holt stood. We're not staying to negotiate with whatever this thing is. Rel, get me propulsion. Already trying, came the strained reply. It's not the systems anymore. It's like we're sunk in something. We are, Tessa said, eyes locked on her display. I'm reading external pressure fluctuations, but they're not consistent with depth. Something's surrounding us, something we can't see. Kamara turned slowly in her chair. Her pupils were blown wide, lips parted as if listening to music. It's speaking to me. Cam. I mean it. Her voice trembled. It's not words, it's memory, but not mine. She looked at Lena now, horrified. I think it's using me to think. Sen stepped back from the glass, blinking like someone waking from anesthesia. It's learning faster now, adapting. Every time we think about it, speak about it, it gets clearer. That doesn't make sense, Holt said. Neither does dreaming, Sen replied. Lena crossed to Kamara's console. The feed showed only the trench ahead, unchanged, still, dark, infinite. But the light had shifted again. The walls of the opening were no longer smooth stone. They were textured now, fibrous, organic. The pulse returned, shorter intervals this time. Thump, thump, thump. With each beat, Lena felt her chest tighten, not fear, not yet, but compression. Like the air was folding inward, as if the ocean itself were pulling them deeper without moving. Something flashed across the screen. A burst of color, too fast to catch, but enough to draw their breath. Lena froze the frame. It was an image. Brief, distorted, a photograph. Old. A man stood beside a research console, smiling. A woman in a white coat leaned against him, laughing. Her face was Lena's. But the man... Her hand clenched the console. It was Caleb, her fiancé, dead 5 years. Tessa stared. That wasn't a system glitch. Kamara spoke behind them, voice distant. It found that in you. Lena closed the image. The sub's lights dimmed again. For a moment, it felt like the ship dipped lower, but no instruments confirmed it. The movement had come from within. Sen stepped forward, holding his notebook, his hand trembling. It's not speaking in language, it's speaking in need, thought forms, emotional resonance, desire. Holt crossed his arms. Desire for what? Unity. No. Sen looked at Lena. It doesn't understand, no. Another vibration rolled through the hull. Not pressure this time. Heat, warm and wet, like breath across the back of the neck. Rel's voice returned, frantic now. Lena, something's inside the vent system. I can hear it moving. Tessa pulled up interior schematics. We're sealed. There's no breach. There's no breach, Rel confirmed. It didn't need one. In the quiet that followed, Kamara exhaled sharply. Her nose had begun to bleed. Cam? Lena stepped forward. Kamara touched her upper lip, then stared at the red smear on her fingers. It's accelerating. I can't hold it back. Lena guided her gently away from the console. You're not a conduit. Kamara met her eyes, and for a moment, she looked older. I already am. The console flickered again. This time, no images, just words. One phrase repeating down the screen. You already know me. Then, say yes. Lena didn't breathe. She stared at those words and felt something stir in the lowest part of her mind. A memory, not hers. Something borrowed. She spoke without meaning to. Everyone to the helm, now. Holt didn't argue. Neither did the others. They ran. And behind them in the dark, the mouth stayed open. Waiting. Chapter 6. One must stay. The helm was dim when they entered. Only the emergency strip lighting remained, pulsing red along the ceiling in soft waves. Slow, methodical, like a warning that had given up trying to be heard. The forward viewport stretched black and empty ahead of them, though they all felt it now. The pull. The weight of the gaze from something that did not need eyes. No one sat. They stood there, the 6 of them, bathed in the ship's red breath, each unwilling to speak first. It was Kamara who broke the silence. She'd wrapped a towel around her nose, though the blood still seeped through. A slow, constant leak. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. It wants an answer. No, Lena said flatly. It wants a host. Tessa shifted beside her, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her expression wasn't fear, more like calculation, the same look she wore before proposing a new theory. Not a host, a participant. You're not seriously considering. I'm considering understanding. Tessa snapped. It hasn't attacked us. It hasn't even damaged the ship. It's shown us memories, language, emotion. It's communicating. Isn't that what we came here for? Rel scoffed from the back, leaning against the bulkhead, like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His hands were shaking again. That's not communication. That's grooming. You don't see the teeth until you're already inside the mouth. We are inside the mouth, Holt muttered. He rubbed his temples and gave a short, dry laugh. I just want to say that, for the record, whatever this thing is, it's not playing 20 questions. Lena watched them all. She felt it then, not just fear, not even dread. A pressure behind her ribs, subtle but persistent, like her thoughts were being edited, not erased, just redirected, urged. It had been getting worse since Sen touched the glass. She turned to him now. How far along are you? Sen looked tired. Not sick, just worn, like a man who had spent the last week walking through a forest only he could see. Far enough to know what it wants. And he met her gaze. It wants one mind to carry, that's all, one agreement, a signature on the bottom line. It's not a contract. It thinks it is. Kamara looked up. It keeps repeating the phrase, one must stay. It said that before, Lena murmured. What happens if no one agrees? No one answered. They didn't have to. The lights dimmed again, this time slower, deeper. The red bled into black like dusk falling over a drowned city. Holt gripped the control yoke, though it hadn't responded in hours. His voice came quiet. We need to surface. We can't. Try anyway. Rel's voice came through the console, muffled but urgent. Engines are locked. Something's rewriting the power grid. It's not mechanical failure anymore. It's control. What does it want? Holt growled. To wear us? Sen shook his head. Not wear. Merge. It wants to become something new. Tessa turned slowly to Lena. Then the question isn't how we escape. It's who we leave. The room went still. You're not suggesting, Kamara started, her voice cracking. Tessa's eyes were sharp now, focused. One mind. That's the trade. That's the choice. It's not killing us. It's asking. It doesn't understand what asking is, Lena said. It mimics. It coerces. It invades. It offered you something, didn't it? Tessa asked. You saw him, didn't you? Lena went still. You saw Caleb. There it was, out in the air. Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to. She'd seen the photo, the smile, that impossible laugh frozen in time, something she hadn't looked at in years, something it had given back to her. Tessa stepped closer. It knows us better than we know ourselves, and it's not attacking. It's inviting. That means it's still waiting for permission. Holt made a low sound in the back of his throat. You think that means something, like there's honor in it? You think if we say yes, it'll be kind? It hasn't been cruel. Yet. Kamara lowered herself into the nearest chair. She looked exhausted, her skin pale and clammy, the towel at her nose long since red. I don't know how much longer I can keep it out. It's louder now. Not voices, just presence. It wants to fill space. It's not choosing her, Rel said. It's too close. It's breaking her down. We can't force someone to stay, Lena said, and we're not sacrificing anyone. There was a silence after that, the kind that bruises. Then Sen stepped forward. I'll do it. Lena turned to him, throat tight. No. You don't get to decide, he said gently. I understand it now. Not fully, not enough to explain, but enough to see where it leads. It doesn't think in sequences. It exists across thought, across time. It's not asking for obedience, just presence. This isn't noble, Rel snapped. This isn't a sacrifice. It's suicide. No, Sen said. It's translation. If one stays, the others can go. That's the deal. You don't know that. I believe it. And somehow, that was worse. The lights surged, bright, white, unnatural. The ship filled with static, every surface humming at once. Kamara screamed again, her hands clutching her head. The floor beneath them vibrated like an engine spinning up, but there was no thrust, just heat, light, and sound. The walls pulsed, the glass bulged, and in the center of it all, a voice, not spoken but embedded, pushed through them. One, stay. Others, ascend. Lena barely heard herself shout, shut it off. But there was nothing to shut off. This wasn't broadcast. It was the environment. Sen stepped toward the viewport again. Outside, the trench glowed. The mouth had fully opened now, revealing a corridor of light that descended endlessly. Not a tunnel, not a passage, an invitation. He turned to Lena. I need you to let me go. No. If we fight it, it'll take all of us. You know that. She wanted to argue. She tried. But the words stuck. Because it was true. He smiled, small and sad. Tell them I made the choice. Not because I was brave. Because I was curious. That's who I've always been. The hatch to the pressure lock was already open. No one had heard it. Sen stepped inside. The door sealed. Rajesh, Kamara cried. But he was gone. Through the viewport, they watched him descend. He moved slowly, as if guided, arms outstretched. His suit lights flickered, then stabilized. The trench shimmered in response. The pulse stopped. And then the light changed, becoming softer, warmer, almost golden. Lena stepped forward, stunned. Outside, the walls of the trench began to close, folding around the corridor. And Sen was gone. Kamara slumped in her seat, shaking. It stopped. The signal. It's quiet. Rel's voice came over the comms. Power's returning. Systems are stable. We're rising. Holt checked the controls. The yoke responded. They were ascending. No alarms, no surge, no resistance. Just slow, deliberate ascent. Lena stared at the trench below, shrinking now, closing like a mouth finished speaking. She said nothing. Tessa finally spoke. Do you think he's dead? No, Lena said. I think he's remembered. The trench vanished beneath them, and the sea, for the first time in hours, was quiet. Chapter 7. We are remembered. They ascended slowly. There was no tremor, no lurch, no warning sirens announcing the shift. One moment, the Cassilia floated in stillness. The next, she began to rise, smooth, steady, as though a hand beneath her had simply let go. None of them spoke at first. Holt's fingers moved across the controls, out of habit, more than purpose. The systems had returned, but the ship was no longer answering to them. It was just moving, granted permission. Kamara sat curled in her chair, legs tucked beneath her, hands clenched tight around a stained towel. The bleeding had stopped, but the tremors remained. Her eyes never left the forward viewport, as if afraid that if she blinked, the trench would open again. Lena stayed standing, arms crossed, shoulders stiff, watching the dark rise past them like ink swirling in reverse. No sign of the light, no trace of Sen. She didn't cry. That would come later, maybe, if it came at all. Tessa was still muttering to herself at the monitor, the data feed scrolling unread. She hadn't left her post since the ship started rising. Her face looked different now, flushed, alive in a way it hadn't been since before they descended. "He chose it," she said eventually, voice low and far away. "It didn't take him. He chose." "No one chooses something like that," Rel replied, coming in through the aft corridor. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, eyes sunken, arms covered in smudges of grease and rust. "You think we're going home, but we're not. Not really." Tessa turned. "What does that mean?" Rel laughed once, a dry, broken sound. "That thing let us go, which means it left something behind." He pointed at Kamara without looking. "She hasn't said a word since he left. You think that's coincidence?" Kamara didn't react. Her eyes were open, but unfocused, like she was somewhere else. Or still, down there. The silence that followed was heavier than it had any right to be. Outside, the water grew lighter. At first, it was just a dull blue smudge on the upper screen. Then it became color, muted, cloudy, but color, after hours of black. It made Lena blink. "We're passing 5,000 meters, Holt murmured, oxygen stabilizing, power holding, pressure within tolerance. Everything sounded normal. Too normal. The kind of normal that follows catastrophe. Then Kamara spoke. "He's still with us." Her voice was quiet, deliberate, like she was reading from something only she could see. Tessa turned, startled. "Rajesh?" Kamara nodded. "Not him. Just what he learned. What it gave him. What it wanted." Lena stepped closer. "Kamara, look at me." The younger woman obeyed, slowly. Her eyes met Lena's, and they were wrong. Not fully. Not in a way that could be measured. But something was different in the stillness behind them, as if the thoughts moving beneath weren't fully hers. "You said the signal was gone," Lena whispered. "It is," Kamara replied, "but it doesn't need to send anymore. It found what it wanted. It learned." The ship creaked softly, a gentle metallic sigh. Water pressed past the hull in smooth waves. They were rising faster now. Holt's readings confirmed it, but he didn't comment. He just kept one hand on the controls, as if pretending they still meant something. Rel muttered something under his breath and stalked out of the cabin. Tessa returned to her terminal, but her fingers hovered above the keys like she'd forgotten what they were for. She glanced at Lena. "You think we're infected?" "I think we're not alone," Lena said. It wasn't paranoia. It was observation. The ship's systems had returned, but nothing had rebooted. The power hadn't resumed. It had simply returned, like a tool picked up again by a hand they couldn't see. They reached 2,000 meters, then 1. The light outside brightened, a softening gray, murky, particulate. And still, nothing stopped them. For a long time, they just watched it rise, all 4 of them, silent. Then, at 600 meters, Kamara began to hum. It was a low sound, tuneless at first. Then it found a rhythm. Holt looked over. "Cam?" She didn't answer. The hum deepened. Rel reappeared from engineering, wiping his hands on a rag. "Something's drawing from the backup reserves. Power drain is minimal, but it's consistent, like something's staying awake." "Where?" Lena asked. "Comms system." Kamara's fingers twitched in time with the hum. Lena stepped closer. "What are you doing?" Kamara blinked. "Nothing. I'm not transmitting." Tessa checked her panel. She's right. No signal being sent. "But the dish is pointed downward," Rel said. "Not up. Not to base. It's listening." Kamara's eyes narrowed. "It's not me." Then, softly, the speakers clicked on. There was no static, no interference. Just a whisper. One mind. The lights dimmed for half a second. Then everything stabilized. Kamara's hands dropped into her lap. The screen returned to normal. Lena backed away, breath shallow. She stared at the console, but it showed nothing now. No transmission, no log, nothing. They breached the surface at 12:18 a.m. The sky above was overcast, dark gray clouds rolling heavy over the black water. The base tower blinked a faint red light in the distance. A tug was already en route, called automatically when the Cecilia passed 1,000 meters. No one celebrated. Lena stood near the hatch, watching the waves. Kamara sat beside her, a blanket around her shoulders, eyes unreadable. Tessa leaned against the bulkhead, silent. Holt sat at the controls, unmoving. The tug hailed them. Rel answered. They didn't say what happened. No one asked. A storm was moving in. The Cecilia was towed back to base, docked, secured, powered down. They stepped back onto the platform under floodlights and rain. No one looked at the trench behind them. Lena walked the length of the dock, soaked to the bone, boots echoing on wet steel. She turned once, glanced at Kamara. The girl stood still, face tilted to the sky, lips moving, humming again. Lena looked out at the water, black, endless. The trench was closed now, but somehow she knew. It still remembered them. And it was waiting. Chapter 8. What came back? There was no ceremony when they surfaced, no celebration, no flood of voices through the radio, just the slow, mechanical approach of the recovery tug cutting through the water, like it wasn't sure the Cecilia belonged there anymore. The storm that night was thick with static. Rain hissed down in sideways sheets, drowning out the radio chatter and soaking the men who met them at the dock. They didn't ask questions. They didn't linger. One by one, the crew was led off the sub like survivors from a shipwreck no one had reported. Lena stepped onto the metal platform, feeling the ocean's breath behind her, warm, wet, watching. She didn't look back. Inside the base, everything moved quietly. Personnel spoke in clipped tones, avoiding eye contact. The lights seemed dimmer than she remembered, the air too still, the walls too clean. Debriefings came and went like shallow tides. Medical exams, psychological evaluations, 100 questions asked by people who didn't really want answers. The official report would say, the mission returned incomplete, citing mechanical interference, electrical malfunction, communication instability. It would not mention the pulse, or the monument, or the voice. No one said Sen's name. Kamara was gone by the third day, transferred without explanation, moved under cover of night, by a team who wore no insignia. Tessa had already left by then, filing her own version of the expedition, one that read more like a technical summary than a confession. Holt vanished next. No forwarding address, no contact. Rel remained behind, but only physically. He wandered the engine bays like a ghost retracing a route he could no longer recall. Lena stayed silent through it all. They gave her quarters with a view of the sea. She never opened the blinds. For weeks, she didn't dream, or if she did, the dreams never followed her back. She existed in the hollow between sounds, waking, eating, staring. She counted the seconds between each heartbeat, like she was waiting for one to skip. The first time she heard it again, she was washing her hands. The faucet had been running too long, water drumming into porcelain, when the sound filtered through. Not over the air, beneath it, a low, deliberate rhythm echoing in the metal. A pressure, not loud, but measured, too slow to be plumbing, too precise to be random. It came once, then again, then stopped. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Her eyes stayed locked on the water swirling down the drain. She waited, but the rhythm didn't return. That night, the walls felt closer. Something had changed in the silence. Not a presence, something thinner, more subtle, a thread stretched taut beneath her skin. On the 12th day, a package arrived. No label, no return address, just a plain box tucked beneath her door. Inside, a hard drive, cold, heavy, clinical. She knew what it was before she even plugged it in. The video feed it contained was time-stamped just before Sen left the ship. One of the exterior cameras, rear-facing. For nearly a minute, there was nothing, just darkness beyond the Caecilia's hull. Then, from the bottom of the frame, something began to rise. Not a shape, not a creature, a mass. Black within black, yet somehow visible. It didn't shimmer, it didn't move, it unfolded, a shifting curtain of shadow pulling itself from the trench. Slow, patient, inevitable, as though it had always been rising, as though they had only now turned to look. There were no lights, no sound, no warning, just one flicker. Then a glimpse, not of form, but of recognition. It stared, not with eyes, but with memory. The feed cut to static, no signature remained. No copy. Just that moment frozen behind her eyes, long after the screen went dark. She didn't report the drive. She didn't destroy it. She simply set it back in the box, returned it to the hallway, and closed the door. By the end of the month, the base had decommissioned the Caecilia permanently. The trench was sealed off. Satellite mapping ceased. Research permits revoked. There were rumors of a secondary site vanishing. Station dark, no beacons, no signals. Disappearances folded into silence, like loose papers swept into the sea. No one looked for answers. They already knew the shape of them. On her final day at the facility, Lena walked the shore at dusk. The water was still, too still. Even the birds avoided the air above it. Waves moved with perfect rhythm, no wind, no pattern, just repetition, a memory pretending to be motion. She stopped near the edge, where the rock curved downward, into the black. Her reflection stared up at her, fractured by small ripples that never seemed to touch the shore. She waited, not for sound, not even for the pulse, but for proof. That it had followed them, that something had climbed out. She waited until the sun disappeared, and when she turned to go, her reflection did not turn with her. Far from the ocean, in a long hallway where lights never flickered, a nurse walked past the same door for the 4th time that morning. Room 312. She paused again, without knowing why. The silence behind it felt too thick. Inside sat a girl in a chair. She hadn't spoken in days, hadn't eaten, only sat, humming softly. The tone was uneven, wavering, but always steady in its rhythm. Her fingers tapped gently against the metal of the chair. Tap, pause, tap, like a clock that had learned to breathe. No books, no phone, no noise, just the hum. that slow, circular sound winding through the air like a lullaby buried in static. When the nurse opened the door, the girl stopped. Her eyes met hers, and for a second, just one, something else looked out. Not cruel, not angry, just aware. And then it was gone. The girl blinked, lips still. The nurse turned away, didn't mention it, didn't come back. The ocean never claimed them. It simply waited. Because once it had spoken, it no longer needed to speak. Once it had been heard, it no longer needed to be seen. And once it had been remembered, it never had to be found again.